If you get frustrated by losing tennis matches, then you've clicked on exactly the right video. I've been coaching over 20 years, and in my experience, the solution is usually way easier than trying to hit serves with more power or forehands with more topspin. Most of the time, tennis players who lose more than they should are simply focusing on the wrong things at the wrong time, which is why I made the winning tennis checklist. Let's go through it together so that you can use it in your very next match and dramatically increase your chances of winning. Step 1 and Step 2 should be completed by the time your 5 or 10-minute warm-up is complete for your match. And Step 1 is really simple. You should have a good idea of this, obviously, walking onto the court that day. What is your biggest strength? What's the biggest asset that once points get going, you can dictate play with? Make your opponent uncomfortable, stretch them. What's the shot or the weapon that typically you take points the most with? Maybe it's your serve or your forehand or your backhand down the line. This is something that should be reliable, but can also force errors and force mistakes from your opponent. And also, this needs to be something that we can engineer points around and strategically use as much as possible. And we're going to be talking about exactly how to do that in just a minute. Step 2 is identify your opponent's biggest weakness. This is the shot that looks the most rough around the edges, the shot that they miss most often, maybe the shot that they avoid, and maybe they run around their backhand and hit as many forehands as possible during the warm-up. Again, you need to have this pegged as closely as possible by the time the warm-up is complete. So you know your strength and you know their biggest weakness. If you're playing somebody that you already have some intel on or you've played before, be careful about assuming what their biggest weakness is. You need to know what their biggest weakness is today. And that might change. Like, you know this from playing tennis. One day after the other, the shot that's most uncomfortable might kind of shift and transition a little bit. So pay close attention during the warm-up. 80% of your attention during the warm-up should be put towards your opponent, trying to deconstruct and play detective about what they're most uncomfortable with. Only spend 20% of your attention and your energy focused on yourself and trying to figure out what feels good or what isn't quite right on any particular day. Step 3 is to engineer a simple, deadly pattern. And a simple, deadly pattern simply maximizes how often you hit your strength while simultaneously maximizing how often your opponent hits their weakness. Here's a very practical and probably very relatable example for you. And this is something you see professional players doing all the time. So don't be fooled by the simplicity of this. So we have two right-handed players here, which means on the deuce side, typically you're going to be hitting forehands. And on the ad side, generally we refer to that as the backhand side, right? So this would be normally a backhand to backhand rally. This would normally be a forehand to forehand rally. Well, if in this hypothetical example, your forehand happens to be your strength and your opponent's backhand happens to be their weakness on this side, which is very frequently the case, then what we can do is in a backhand to backhand exchange, upgrade by anticipating a cross-court backhand from our opponent and shift around to hit a forehand instead of a backhand. Now we're hitting our strength on a really high percentage target going cross court to our opponent's weakness. And so we're layering advantages here. We've got our strength going to our opponent's weakness. And if you can engineer this by, let's say, hitting a serve in the right spot. So let's say you're on the deuce side hitting a serve. If you know that every time you serve out wide, as an example, and kind of stretch your opponent, then they tend to float a ball to the middle of the court, then you can anticipate that and move around the ball. And instead of hitting a backhand on your backhand side, hit a forehand to their backhand side. And you see professional players engineering stuff like this constantly. I want you to think very, very simple. Simple, deadly pattern. Your strength, their weakness, simple pattern to combine the two. Step 4 is another deceptively simple. Please do not pass this over or think that it's too obvious. Go to the well, meaning once you find something that works, once you come up with your simple, deadly pattern, keep going to the well until the well is dry. All you need is one effective pattern and then exploit that pattern until the match is over. And more times than not, all you need is just that one, that like I did a diagram just a second ago, your forehand to their backhand. In most cases against most opponents, all you need is one of those patterns and just milk it and go to the well again and again and again until one of two things happens. Either they make an adjustment and make some kind of tactical play that neutralizes your deadly pattern, or it just stops working. Maybe they make some kind of technical adjustment. They start driving instead of slicing, and so it neutralizes your play. If neither of those two things happen, don't try to be tricky. Don't try to be sneaky. Do not overcomplicate things. Just keep going to the well again and again and again until either they adjust or the match is over and you won the match. Most tennis players dramatically overcomplicate things. If you just remember this simple phrase and you do the first 3 steps, already you're going to be well on your way to winning a lot more tennis matches. If this lesson has already been helpful, do me a favor and click the like button. It's going to a special cause, which I'm going to tell you about in a minute. But also make sure to download the PDF. In the first link in the description down below and also the comments down below, just click the link and tell me where to send the PDF. I'll send it to you along with a bonus lesson that will help you put all of this coaching into action. If you print this out or put it on your phone and you just glance at it during changeovers or print it out, put it in your racket bag, this is super simple stuff, but it's a matter of just having the right things in mind when it comes to close matches. Even matches that aren't close. If you can be a detective out there and have the right things in mind, play the right patterns at the right times, and manage momentum, which we're about to talk about, then you're going to be so much more successful. So download the PDF, put it on your phone, put it on your tablet, print it out, put it in your racket bag. I know you're going to win more matches as a result. So what if your opponent gets wise to your simple deadly pattern and they make some kind of adjustment or they neutralize it? Well, step 5 is you either exploit the opening that they just gave you, and I'm going to give you an example of that in just a second. Anytime your opponent adjusts based on something that you're doing that was working, they leave you some other opportunity. I'll talk to you about that in a second. Or you can go back to step 2 in the checklist, find a different weakness, and create another simple deadly pattern. Honestly, most matches you're only going to need one. Once you find one that works, you just keep milking it until the match is over. But sometimes you got to go back to step 2 and then work your way down again. But let's talk about if they make some kind of adjustment and they do a good job. So let's talk about that backhand to backhand side rally. Remember we talked about moving over and hitting a forehand instead of a backhand? Let's say your opponent starts doing the same thing. And they say, I see what you're doing here. You're trying to hammer my backhand, pummel my backhand. So what I'm going to do to neutralize that is start preempting, going over, anticipating and shifting over, and I'm going to hit forehands instead. And so they start shifting over. Well, what that does as they make that positioning adjustment over to their left is it exposes another opening on the court. Instead of positioning themselves in the correct spot, just a little bit offset from the center, now they're starting to cheat over. And so instead of hitting an inside-out forehand from your backhand side, you can hit an inside-in forehand. Inside out means you hit the ball back cross court. Inside in, receiving a forehand, means that you go down the line. So by making a simple pattern adjustment, previously we were just hammering and pounding the backhand side. Now, if 1 out of 4 times or 1 out of 5 times you go down the line, we force them to kind of be honest and kind of split the difference. And now you can go right back to hammering the backhand again. That kind of simple adjustment can put you back in the driver's seat. But if for whatever reason they neutralize your plan, just go back to step number 2, find another weakness to pick on, and create another simple deadly pattern. Steps 6 and 7 alone are going to win you a lot more tennis matches. They have to do with managing momentum, something that, frankly, most tennis players aren't even paying attention to at all, but it's super critical. Anytime things are going in your favor, you have the energy in the match, things are tipping slightly on the scales in your favor, you want to keep things moving as quickly as possible. That means spend as little time in between points as possible. It means don't sit down on your changeover, take a drink of water, walk right over to the other side, and just keep things rolling. On the other hand, if the momentum is traveling away from you and towards your opponent, I like to think of this kind of like a snowball, right? As it rolls downhill, it picks up more snow, it goes faster, picks up more snow, rolls faster. And most tennis players are only really aware of the snowball effect once the snowball gets to like right here. And it's too late. And it's like, oh no, like they have all the momentum. And now it's kind of too late because there's so much momentum. If you can start sniffing out momentum shifts here, whether it's in your favor or not, then you can really maximize the whole momentum shift. So again, if things are tipping in your favor, keep things rolling. Push the snowball down the hill. If on the other hand, things are tipping towards your opponent, take all the time you have in between points. I'm not saying cheat. I'm not saying do anything against the rules. Just find things to do that fill up the time in between points. Slow things down. Take all the time that you're allowed to have on a changeover. Slow things down. Otherwise, you could find your opponent with all the momentum and the huge snowball at the bottom of the hill before you know it. So pay attention to that. And when you have the momentum, keep things moving. When you don't, make sure that you slow things down. Hopefully this was super helpful. We're supporting Milwaukee Tennis Education Foundation. Their mission is to improve the lives and futures of Milwaukee's youth through tennis education and mentoring. Every like this video and every other video on the Essential Tennis YouTube channel gets, this month, we're going to donate 1 cent to MTEF. If you want to check them out, go to mtef.com. I'm just really passionate about them and what they do here in the Milwaukee area, our local community. And finally, remember to download the free PDF. All you have to do is click the first link in the description down below. Tell us where to send the PDF, and I'll include a free bonus training session with myself as well. But either way, get this on your phone, print it out, put it in your racket bag, put it on your tablet, whatever you have with you handy on the court during matches, so that you can quick glance at it, reference it. You don't even necessarily have to write things in. Just use this as a template to remind yourself, how can I play smart tennis and win more matches? If this was helpful, do me a favor, click the like button. It'll send a penny over to MTEF. And thank you so much for your support. I hope this is a huge help and helps you get more wins out on the courts.